4:30 a.m. That was the time my alarm went off every single day for the past 3 years. Not to go to the gym, not to meditate, but to make sure the almond milk for my mother-in-law, Agatha, was warmed to exactly 115 degrees, and that my husband's custom Italian suits were steamed to perfection before he woke up. I was a ghost in my own home. A very tired, very unpaid ghost. Clara, the shrill voice pierced through the quiet kitchen like a rusty blade. I flinched, nearly dropping the porcelain cup. Agatha marched down the stairs, dragging her silk robe behind her. She didn't look at me, she looked at the floor. I can still see water spots on the marble near the entryway, she sneered, running a perfectly manicured finger over the kitchen island. Do you think my son works 12 hours a day to come home to a pigsty? You sit at home all day doing absolutely nothing, and you can't even mop a floor properly? I swallowed the lump in my throat. I kept my voice low, soft, submissive. I'm sorry, Agatha. I'll clean it again right now. You're pathetic, she scoffed, snatching the coffee from my hands. Mark could have married the mayor's daughter. He could have married a woman with a pedigree, with a dowry. Instead, he took pity on an orphan with nothing but the cheap clothes on her back. Remember your place. Remember your place. I squeezed my eyes shut. Breathe in. Breathe out, smile. I endured it. I endured every insult, every sigh of disgust, every time she accidentally threw away my cheap clothes because they were an eyesore. I endured it because I loved Mark. Or, at least I loved the man I thought he was when he proposed to me in that tiny, rain-soaked apartment 5 years ago. But lately Mark had changed. Heavy footsteps echoed from the staircase. Mark walked in, checking his gold watch, a gift from his mother. He didn't say good morning. He didn't even look at me. He just stared at his phone, a smirk playing on his lips as his thumbs flew across the screen. Breakfast is ready, Mark, I said, placing the plate of eggs Benedict in front of him. He didn't look up. Not hungry, but it's your favorite. And tomorrow is your birthday, so I thought we could. I said I'm not hungry, Clara, he snapped, slamming his phone face down on the table. The sudden noise made both me and his mother jump. He glared at me, his eyes cold and hollow. Stop nagging me. God, you are so suffocating. I have real problems to deal with at the company, okay? Big things. Things a housewife who spends all day watching TV couldn't possibly understand. As he stood up, a heavy, intoxicating scent hit my nose. It wasn't his usual cologne. It was sweet, floral, expensive. Chanel No. 5. My heart dropped into my stomach. Mark, why do you smell like women's perfume? He froze just for a microsecond. Then he let out a cruel, barking laugh. Are you insane? He spat, stepping into my space, using his height to intimidate me. It's my new fabric softener, you idiot. But of course you wouldn't know the smell of expensive things if it hit you in the face. Stop being a paranoid, jealous freak. It's disgusting. I just asked a question. I stammered, my hands trembling. Well, stop asking, he yelled. Look at yourself, Clara. Look at your hair. Look at those baggy sweatpants. You look like a homeless person. If I wanted to be around a woman who actually took care of herself, I wouldn't have to look far, trust me. You're lucky I even come home to this depressing house. He grabbed his briefcase and stormed out. The front door slammed shut, rattling the windows. I stood there, paralyzed. My chest heaved. My hands shook so violently I had to grip the edge of the counter. The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated disrespect. He was cheating. I knew it. A woman's intuition never lies, and the lipstick smudge on his collar yesterday was the final nail in the coffin. Agatha sipped her coffee, a wicked smile spreading across her face. He's outgrowing you, Clara. A successful man needs a queen, not a maid. You'd better pack your bags soon before he throws you out himself. She walked away, leaving me alone in the sprawling, suffocating kitchen. I waited until I heard her bedroom door click shut. Then, the tears stopped. The trembling ceased. The pathetic, submissive housewife vanished. I locked my bedroom door, pulled back the heavy rug under the bed, and unlocked a hidden floor safe. Inside wasn't jewelry, it wasn't cash. It was a matte black, heavily encrypted laptop. I opened it. The screen illuminated the dark room, reflecting in my eyes. I wasn't just Clara the orphan. I was CL, the anonymous lead developer and sole founder of Aegis, the cybersecurity startup that was currently tearing up Silicon Valley. And exactly 8 hours ago, the ink had dried on a buyout contract. I opened my email from Silicon Valley Bank. Subject: Wire transfer confirmation. Amount: 500,000 USD. Status: cleared. I stared at the 9 zeros. $500 million. For 3 years I had worked in the shadows. I coded in the dead of night while they slept. I built an empire while they treated me like dirt. I was planning to reveal everything tomorrow on his birthday. I had already wired a $20 million cash payment for the largest, most exclusive mansion in the Pinnacle, the ultra-wealthy neighborhood Agatha always drove past and drooled over but could never afford. I bought it for him, for us. I thought money would fix his stress. I thought it would make Agatha finally accept me. But as the scent of that cheap Chanel knockoff lingered in my mind, and his cruel mocking laughter echoed in my ears, something inside me snapped. A cold, dark fury began to bubble in my veins. He didn't just break my heart, he humiliated me. He gaslit me. He looked down on me from a throne built on glass. I closed the laptop. My reflection on the black screen looked different. Sharper, lethal. "You want a queen, Mark?" I whispered to the empty room. "Careful what you wish for, because tomorrow the maid dies, and the executioner takes her place." The rain that evening didn't just fall. It felt like it was trying to punish the earth. It was a torrential, blinding downpour, the kind that soaked through your clothes and chilled you to the very bone in seconds. I had spent the last 2 hours navigating the flooded streets in my beat-up sedan, driving to 3 different artisanal grocery stores across town. I was hunting for the exact type of imported Italian truffles and wild-caught sea bass Mark loved. Tomorrow was his birthday, the day I planned to reveal everything, the day I would hand him the deed to the $20 million mansion at the Pinnacle. The day I would finally prove to Agatha that I wasn't a parasite. My fingers were numb and aching as I carried the heavy paper bags up the driveway. I was shivering, my cheap sneakers squelching with every step. That was when I saw it, parked carelessly across the driveway, taking up both spaces, was a cherry red Porsche Macan. It was gleaming, fresh out of the showroom, water beating off its ceramic-coated hood. I stopped. The rain battered my face, mixing with a sudden icy knot of dread forming in my stomach. "Whose car is this?" I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking violently from the cold and an inexplicable sense of impending doom. I pushed the heavy oak door open, expecting the usual oppressive silence of the house. Instead, I was hit by a wall of sound, laughter, high-pitched, silvery, and sickeningly confident. Overlaid with it was the deep, booming chuckle of my husband, a sound I hadn't heard directed at me in years. And underneath it all, the pop of a champagne cork, followed by the clinking of crystal flutes. I stood in the dark foyer, water pooling around my cheap shoes, the heavy bags cutting into my wrists. I didn't announce myself, I moved like a ghost. The very thing they had turned me into, stepping silently toward the warm golden glow of the living room. The smell hit me first. It wasn't the scent of the lavender plugins I bought. It was overwhelming, suffocating. Chanel No. 5, the exact same scent that had lingered on Mark's collar this morning. I rounded the corner. The scene before me felt like a photograph pulled from someone else's life. Mark was sitting on the velvet sofa, his tie loosened, a relaxed, boyish grin on his face. Sitting practically in his lap was a woman. She was breathtaking in the most manufactured, expensive way possible. Glossy blonde hair falling in perfect waves, a skin-tight designer dress that screamed old money, and stilettos that cost more than I supposedly made in a year. Her hand, adorned with a massive, gaudy diamond tennis bracelet, was resting intimately on Mark's chest. Sitting across from them, in her favorite wingback chair, was Agatha. She wasn't scowling. She wasn't complaining about the dust. She was beaming. She was looking at this strange woman with an expression of pure, unadulterated adoration. An expression I had spent 5 years breaking my back to earn, only to receive scraps of disdain. "To my future daughter-in-law," Agatha chimed, raising her crystal flute. "To Victoria, the woman who is finally going to bring some class and actual wealth into this family." "Oh, Agatha, you flatter me," the woman, Victoria, purred. She leaned up and kissed Mark directly on the mouth. A long, lingering, wet kiss. Mark didn't pull away. He kissed her back, his hand sliding down to rest on her hip. My hands went completely numb. The wet paper bags tore. A jar of imported truffles slipped through the wet cardboard. It hit the hardwood floor with a deafening, sharp crack, sending dark oil and glass shards exploding across the pristine wood. The laughter died instantly. 3 heads snapped in my direction. For a second, nobody moved. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock, and the rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. I looked at Mark, my husband. The man I had cooked for, cleaned for, and silently built an empire for. I waited for the panic. I waited for him to jump up, to push her away, to stammer out a pathetic excuse. I waited for the guilt. There was none. He didn't flinch, he didn't blink. He just stared at me, annoyed. as if I were a stray dog that had wandered into a Michelin star restaurant and ruined the ambiance. Mark? My voice was a fragile, broken whisper. It didn't even sound like me. Who is this? Victoria didn't wait for him to answer. She slowly uncrossed her long legs and stood up, smoothing down her designer dress. She looked me up and down, her eyes raking over my soaking wet hair, my cheap, rain-soaked jacket, and the groceries spilled at my feet. Her lips curled into a smirk of pure pity and disgust. So this is the famous Clara, Victoria drawled, taking a slow sip of her champagne. Mark told me you were tragic, but, honey, you look like you just crawled out of a dumpster. I'd offer to shake your hand, but I don't want to catch whatever poverty disease you're carrying. Shut up, I breathed, my chest heaving. I looked at Mark. Mark, tell her to get out. Tell her to get out of our house right now. Mark sighed, a long, exaggerated sound of exhaustion. He set his glass down, stood up, and casually buttoned his suit jacket. He walked toward me, his face a mask of absolute coldness. Stop screaming, Clara. You're embarrassing yourself, he said, his tone icy. And she's not going anywhere. This is her house now. Or it will be. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? I'm done, Clara, Mark said, crossing his arms. He looked at me not with hatred but with absolute indifference, which was so much worse. I'm a rising executive. I need a partner who elevates me. Someone who understands high society, networking, investments. Victoria is the heiress to a real estate dynasty. Do you know what she just did today? She put a down payment on a $20 million estate at the Pinnacle for us, for our future. The irony was so sharp I could taste blood in my mouth. The Pinnacle. The exact estate I had just wired $500 million of my trade money to. The estate Victoria was currently lying through her perfect, veneered teeth about. She's lying, I whispered, shaking my head. Mark, she's lying to you. She can't afford. Enough, Agatha roared, suddenly rising from her chair. She marched over, her face twisted in a vicious scowl. Don't you dare project your own pathetic, broke reality onto Victoria. You are nothing but a leech. A parrot who latched onto my son when he was young and naive. You bring absolutely zero value to this family. You don't work. You don't have connections. You don't even have parents to leave you an inheritance. Agatha turned to the staircase. I'm sick of looking at you. I packed your trash myself. With a violent shove, Agatha kicked a battered, cheap canvas suitcase down the stairs. It tumbled end over end, bursting open halfway down. My faded t-shirts, my plain underwear, my worn-out jeans spilled out over the steps like discarded garbage. Get out, Agatha spat. I looked at Mark, tears finally breaking free, hot and stinging against my freezing skin. Mark, please. We've been married for 5 years. You can't do this. Not like this. Mark reached into his inner jacket pocket. He pulled out a thick envelope and threw it directly at my chest. It hit me and fluttered to the floor, landing in the puddle of truffle oil. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Sign them, Mark demanded. My lawyer already filed the preliminary paperwork. I'm taking the house. I'm taking the cars. Not that you paid for a single cent of them anyway. You get nothing. You deserve nothing. Victoria laughed from the sofa, pouring herself another glass of champagne. Make sure she takes her cheap groceries with her, Mark. We are ordering caviar tonight. Anger, it wasn't a spark, it was a forest fire. It ignited in the pit of my stomach, burning away the sadness. Incinerating the pathetic, submissive housewife I had forced myself to be. My breathing slowed, the trembling in my hands stopped entirely. You're throwing me out, I said. My voice was no longer shaking, it was dead. Flat. In the middle of the night. In a storm. With nothing. You came with nothing. You leave with nothing, Mark replied coldly. Actually, Agatha interrupted, stepping forward with a glint of pure malice in her eyes. She's leaving with less. Before I could react, Agatha grabbed the lapels of my winter coat. The only thing keeping me from freezing. Mark bought this coat his credit card last winter, Agatha sneered. Take it off, Agatha, it's 40 degrees outside. Take it off, she shrieked, violently yanking the fabric. I didn't fight her. I let her pull the coat off my shoulders. I stood there in a thin, damp cotton shirt. The cold air of the open doorway bit into my skin like needles. Agatha threw the coat onto the floor. She stepped right up to my face. I could smell the stale coffee and malice on her breath. A useless woman like you, Agatha whispered, her eyes wide with psychotic glee. Without my son's money, you'll end up living under a bridge by tomorrow. Now get out of my house. She shoved me, hard. My wet shoes slipped on the hardwood. I stumbled backward, falling onto the hard concrete of the porch. The rain hit me instantly, soaking through my thin shirt in seconds. Mark stepped into the doorway. He looked down at me, shivering on the concrete, the rain plastering my hair to my face. Goodbye, Clara. Have a nice life, slam. The heavy oak door shut, the deadbolt clicked into place. The porch lights immediately flicked off, plunging me into total darkness. I sat there on the freezing concrete for a long time. The rain battered my shoulders. The wind howled through the trees, biting into my exposed skin. Through the window, I could see them. Mark pulling Victoria into a dip, kissing her while Agatha clapped her hands in delight. They were celebrating my demise. They were celebrating their bright, wealthy future. I slowly pushed myself off the ground. I didn't cry. The time for tears was over. I looked through the glass one last time, my eyes fixing on Mark's smiling face, and then on Victoria's stolen, rented Porsche in the driveway. They thought they had just thrown away a parasite. They thought they had amputated a dead limb. They had no idea they had just unleashed a goddamn Leviathan. I turned my back to the house. I didn't have my coat. I didn't have my car keys. I didn't even have my phone. But what I did have was a photographic memory, a 10-digit bank account number, and the authorization codes to a $500 million empire. I walked out into the storm. I didn't run. I walked. Every step through the freezing puddles solidified the ice in my veins. You want to see me under a bridge, Agatha? I thought, the corners of my mouth finally curling into a slow, terrifying smile under the pouring rain. We'll see who's homeless by tomorrow morning. The rain didn't stop. If anything, it fell harder, like icy gravels against my skin. Running is for prey. Running is for the weak, the frightened, the victims. And as I walked down the pitch-black asphalt of the suburban road, my thin cotton shirt clinging to my freezing body, I realized something profoundly liberating. I was no longer a victim. For 5 years I had shrunk myself to fit into their tiny, pathetic world. I had dulled my own shine so Mark wouldn't feel insecure. I had swallowed Agatha's venom so the house would have peace. I had played the role of the helpless, grateful orphan so perfectly that even I had almost believed it. Almost. I walked for 2 miles. My cheap sneakers squelched with every step, the soles wearing thin against the gravel. The cold had moved past the point of pain. It was a dull, heavy numbness creeping up my limbs, but inside my chest, there was a furnace roaring to life. Ahead, the neon lights of a 24-hour gas station flickered through the downpour. It was a dingy, desolate place. I pushed the glass door open, the bell chiming weakly. The cashier, a teenager with heavy eyeliner and a bored expression, looked up. Her eyes widened in horror as a puddle immediately formed around my muddy bare ankles. "Oh my God," she gasped, stepping out from behind the counter. "Miss, are you okay? Do you need me to call the police? Were you mugged?" "No," I said. My voice was eerily calm, devoid of the shivering that racked my body. "I wasn't mugged. I just lost some dead weight. Could I please borrow your phone?" She handed me the receiver without hesitation. My fingers hovered over the keypad. A part of me, the last dying ember of the loyal wife, needed to know. I needed to know if there was even a shred of humanity left in the man I had loved. I dialed Mark's number from memory. It rang 3 times. "What?" Mark's voice barked through the receiver. He sounded annoyed, slightly breathless. "Mark, it's me." There was a heavy sigh on the other end, then the unmistakable sound of Victoria giggling. Her voice muffled but clear enough. "Who is it, baby? Is it the caterer?" I told them beluga caviar, not that cheap crap. "It's the stray," Mark muttered to her, not bothering to cover the mouthpiece. He returned to me. "How did you get this number? Are you at a payphone like it's 1995? Listen to me very carefully, Clara. If you come back to this house, I will have you arrested for trespassing." "I'm at a gas station, Mark," I said, my voice dangerously steady. "It's freezing. I have no coat, no money, and nowhere to go. I just want to ask you one thing. After 5 years, after everything I did for you and your mother, does this mean absolutely nothing to you?" A cruel, sharp laugh pierced my ear. But it wasn't Mark. It was Agatha. She must have put the call on speaker. "Everything you did?" Agatha screeched, her voice dripping with venom. "What did you do exactly? Scrub the toilets? Cook mediocre pasta? My son is a vice president now, Clara. He is entering the upper echelons of society. You are an anchor dragging him down into the mud. Victoria is buying us a $20 million estate tomorrow. What can you give him? A handmade coupon for a back rub." "Agatha's right." Victoria's sickeningly sweet voice chimed in. "Look, Clara, honey, it's just survival of the fittest. You're a Honda Civic, and Mark finally realized he deserves a Ferrari. Just sign the divorce papers my lawyer emailed you. If you don't, we'll drag this out in court, and I promise you, I have enough lawyers to make sure you pay us alimony." I closed my eyes. The last thread of the woman named Clara the housewife snapped. It didn't just break, it dissolved into ash. Are you done? I asked quietly. Sign the papers, Clara, and don't ever call this number again, Mark sneered. Click the dial tone hummed in my ear. I gently placed the receiver back on the cradle. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. A terrifyingly serene smile spread across my face. Are you sure you don't want me to call someone? The cashier asked, backing away slightly. Unnerved by my sudden shift in demeanor. I do need to make one more call, I said softly. An international one, I'll pay you back, I promise. I picked up the phone again and dialed a number secured by 3 layers of encryption, routed through a server in Geneva. It rang exactly once. Aegis Protocol, state your clearance, a deep robotic voice answered. Clearance architect overwrite code Black Lotus. There was a 2-second pause. Then the line cleared and the frantic, panicked voice of an older man came through. Miss Clara? Good God. I've been trying to reach your secure line for 3 hours. The buyout is complete. The board is waiting for your signature. Where are you? Why is your GPS tracker showing you at a suburban gas station? It was Elias, my head of security and personal wealth manager. For 3 years, he had been the only person in the world who knew my true identity. Change of plans, Elias, I said. My voice commanding, echoing the CEO I truly was. I've left the residence permanently. Left? Miss Clara, it's a Category 4 storm out there. Shall I deploy a security team to the house? No. Let them rot in that house for one more night, I said, staring out at the pouring rain. I need extraction, right now. And Elias? Yes, ma'am? I need you to pull a full financial background check on a woman named Victoria. I don't know her last name, but she claims to be a real estate heiress. She's currently sitting in my former living room. I want every bank statement, every credit card debt, every dirty secret she has on my desk in 20 minutes. Understood. Extraction is 3 minutes away. Hold tight, ma'am. I hung up the phone. I turned to the cashier and gave her a small nod. Thank you for the phone. 3 minutes later, the blinding xenon headlights of 2 black armored SUVs cut through the rain, flanking a pristine midnight blue Rolls-Royce Phantom. They pulled into the dingy gas station, looking like a fleet of alien spaceships landing in a junkyard. 4 men in tactical black suits stepped out into the pouring rain. They didn't flinch. One of them, a towering man with an earpiece, rushed into the gas station holding a massive black umbrella and a heavy cashmere overcoat. Miss Clara, he said, bowing his head respectfully. He draped the thick, warm cashmere over my shivering shoulders. The car is ready. The teenage cashier dropped her jaw, staring at the convoy, then at me. I reached into the pocket of the cashmere coat, pulled out a thick stack of $100 bills, easily $10,000, and placed it on the counter next to the candy bars. For the phone call, I said. I walked out of the gas station. The rain couldn't touch me anymore. The heavy doors of the Rolls-Royce closed with a satisfying vault-like thud, shutting out the storm, shutting out the cold, shutting out my past. Inside, the cabin was heated. Soft jazz played on the bespoke sound system. Sitting across from me was Elias holding an encrypted iPad. Next to him was a fresh set of dry designer clothes. Welcome back to the world, ma'am, Elias said gently, handing me a steaming cup of Earl Grey tea. You had us terrified. Are you injured? Only my pride, Elias. I took a sip, the warmth spreading through my chest. But I think it's about to make a very swift recovery. Show me. Elias turned the iPad toward me. There it was. My offshore holding account, balance. $500,450,000. I didn't blink. $500 million. The culmination of endless sleepless nights, of building the world's most impenetrable cybersecurity firewall while Mark slept soundly beside me, completely oblivious to the genius he was married to. The funds have fully cleared, Elias reported, adjusting his glasses. Silicon Valley Bank confirmed the transfer. You are officially one of the wealthiest self-made women in the country. Now, regarding your other requests. He swiped the screen. A dossier appeared. A photo of Victoria, without the heavy makeup and the perfect lighting, flashed on the screen. Victoria Kensington, Elias said, his voice dripping with professional disdain. Or should I say Victoria Smith? She is not an heiress, ma'am. She is a high-end grifter. Her parents own a bankrupt laundromat in Ohio. She has over $400,000 in credit card debt, split across 14 different aliases. She has been evicted 3 times in the last 2 years. I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto the screen. And the Porsche in the driveway? Leased. Under a sugar daddy's name who is currently under investigation for tax fraud, Elias smirked. The diamonds she wears are cubic zirconia. The designer dresses are high-quality replicas from a factory overseas. She targets mid-level corporate men who are desperate to climb the social ladder. Men who are too arrogant and too stupid to do a background check. Men exactly like Mark. A dark, genuine laugh escaped my lips. It was a beautiful, poetic tragedy. Mark had thrown away a billionaire to marry a bankrupt con artist. He had shattered our vows for a mirage. And the estate? I asked, looking out the window as the Rolls-Royce merged onto the highway, heading toward the city's most exclusive five-star hotel. The $20 million mansion at the Pinnacle? Elias nodded. The transaction was completed at 4 p.m. today. It is entirely under your name, paid in full in cash. The estate manager has fully staffed the house. It is ready for you to move in tomorrow. Victoria told Mark she was buying that exact house for him, I mused, tracing the rim of the teacup. She told Agatha she put a down payment on it today. She's planning to take them there tomorrow for a tour to secure her lie, probably hoping to string them along until she can drain Mark's savings. Elias raised an eyebrow. Shall I have security bar them from the gates of the Pinnacle tomorrow? No, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous, icy whisper. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window of the Rolls-Royce. My wet hair was plastered to my neck, but my eyes were feral. The submissive housewife was dead. The queen had finally taken her throne. Let them come, Elias, I ordered softly. Let them put on their best clothes. Let them drive up to those golden gates, believing they are about to step into paradise. I want them to feel the absolute peak of arrogance. I turned back to Elias, a ruthless smile playing on my lips. Because tomorrow morning, I am going to rip the sky down on their heads, prepare the legal team, freeze every asset tied to my name. And Elias, buy the bank that holds the mortgage to Agatha's house. Consider it done, ma'am. The Rolls-Royce sped into the night, carrying not a broken woman, but an apex predator ready to strike. Chào Hun. Đây là phần 4 của kịch bản, được viết bằng tiếng Anh với nhịp độ dồn dập, sắc bén và miêu tả chi tiết để đẩy cảm xúc người xem lên mức cao nhất. The morning sun over Los Angeles was blindingly bright, a harsh contrast to the violent storm of the night before. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse suite at the Four Seasons, sipping a perfectly brewed espresso. I looked at my reflection. The woman staring back at me wasn't the exhausted, terrified housewife who had been thrown into the freezing rain 12 hours ago. She was entirely gone. In her place stood the CEO of a $500 million empire. I wore a tailored, blood-red Alexander McQueen suit that fit like armor, paired with matte black Christian Louboutin stilettos. My hair was sleek, my makeup flawless, my eyes cold and sharp as obsidian. Elias, my head of security, stepped into the room, adjusting his earpiece. Ma'am. The rats are at the gate, he said, handing me a thick leather-bound dossier. They arrived at the Pinnacle exactly 4 minutes ago in the leased Porsche. They are currently attempting to bypass the main security checkpoint. I took the dossier. A slow, predatory smile touched my lips. Let's go welcome my guests. 10 minutes later, my convoy of 3 black armored SUVs pulled up to the grand, wrought iron gates of the Pinnacle, the most heavily guarded, exclusive residential fortress in the state. Through the tinted windows of my vehicle, I watched the pathetic comedy unfolding outside. Victoria's leased red Porsche was parked haphazardly, blocking the entrance lane. She was standing outside the car, her face flushed with rage, waving her cubic zirconia bracelet at a stone-faced security guard. Behind her, Mark was puffing out his chest, trying to look like a man of authority, while Agatha stood with her arms crossed, looking utterly disgusted that she was being made to wait. I told you, I am Victoria Kensington, Victoria screeched, her voice echoing loudly in the quiet, manicured street. I put the down payment on the $20 million estate at the top of the hill yesterday. Open this gate right now, or I will have your job. I will buy the security company you work for and fire you myself. The guard didn't even blink. He checked his tablet. Ma'am, as I have told you 3 times, there is no Kensington on the registry, and the estate at the summit was purchased in full in cash yesterday afternoon by a private buyer. Your name is on the neighborhood blacklist for an outstanding trespassing warrant from 2 years ago. I am going to have to ask you to turn your vehicle around. Agatha gasped, clutching her pearls. She marched forward, pointing a manicured finger at the guard. Listen here, you insolent little man. My son is a vice president. This is his fiancée. You are looking at the new owners of this community. You open that gate before I call the police and have you arrested for harassment. Mark stepped up, placing a hand on Victoria's waist. Look, buddy. There's obviously a glitch in your system. Just let us through. We have an interior designer waiting for us at the estate. Don't make this ugly. I tapped the glass of my window. Elias nodded and spoke into his radio. Open the gates, let the queen through. The massive, heavily fortified iron gates groaned, slowly swinging open. But they weren't opening for the Porsche. Victoria smirked, crossing her arms. See? I told you, they just had to verify my... She stopped. The blood drained from her face as my convoy smoothly glided past them, pulling directly into the private driveway of the gates. The SUVs parked, forming a barricade. Elias stepped out first. He opened my door. I stepped out into the Californian sun. The click of my stilettos on the pristine pavement sounded like gunshots in the sudden, dead silence. I was flanked by 4 massive men in tactical suits, and my lead corporate attorney, Mr. Sterling. I didn't look angry. I didn't look sad. I looked at them the way a scientist looks at a petri dish. Agatha's jaw physically dropped. Her eyes bugged out, darting from my designer suit to the Rolls-Royce, trying to process the impossible image before her. "See Clara?" Mark stammered. His voice cracked. He looked at me, then at the guards who were now standing at attention, saluting me. What are you doing here? Did you follow us? Have you lost your mind?" Agatha quickly recovered from her shock, her face twisting into a familiar, ugly sneer. "You psychotic stalker, I told you to go live under a bridge. Are you trying to beg for your miserable life in front of Victoria? Security, arrest this tramp. She's a homeless lunatic." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Power doesn't scream. It whispers. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a diamond blade. "He works for me. As of 9 a.m. this morning, I am the majority shareholder of the property management firm that owns this checkpoint, and he is doing exactly what I pay him to do, keeping the trash off my property." Victoria let out a forced, high-pitched laugh. "Oh my God, Mark, your ex-wife has completely snapped. She rented a suit and some fake bodyguards to try and scare us. This is so pathetic. Clara, honey, you can't afford a cup of coffee, let alone this neighborhood." I turned my gaze to Victoria, the fake heiress. The woman who had slept in my house, drank my wine, and tried to steal my life. "You're right, Victoria," I said smoothly, taking a slow step toward her. "I don't know much about renting things, but you certainly do, don't you, Miss Smith?" Victoria froze, her breath hitched. The smug smile vanished instantly. "What did you just call me?" she whispered. I snapped my fingers. Mr. Sterling, my lawyer, handed me the flipped it open. "Victoria Smith," I read aloud, my voice echoing clearly. "Born in Dayton, Ohio, parents run a bankrupt laundromat. Currently carrying $412,000 in credit card debt across 14 different aliases. 3 evictions in the last 24 months. Shut up!" Victoria shrieked, lunging forward. But my security detail stepped in, forcing her back. Mark looked at her, his brow furrowed in deep confusion. "Victoria, what is she talking about, Smith?" I pulled a document from the folder and held it up. "And let's talk about this beautiful Porsche Macan, shall we? Leased. The lease is under the name of Gary Jenkins, a 64-year-old married man, currently under federal investigation for tax evasion. Does Gary know you took his car to impress a middle management corporate drone, Victoria?" "It's a lie," Agatha screamed, her voice bordering on hysterical. "Mark, don't listen to her. She faked all of this out of pure bitter jealousy." I tossed the entire folder directly at Victoria's chest. The heavy papers exploded, scattering her disastrous financial history, her eviction notices, and photos of her real dilapidated apartment all over the wet pavement. Mark slowly bent down. He picked up a bank statement, he read it. His face went from pale to red to a sickening shade of gray. He looked up at Victoria, his eyes wide, with a horrifying realization. "Victoria, this is a court order for repossession," Mark choked out. "Your accounts are overdrawn by $50,000. You don't have $20 million. You don't even have $20. Victoria was hyperventilating. The gig was up. The illusion was shattered. She looked at Mark, then at the 4 massive bodyguards staring her down, and made the only calculation a grifter knows how to make. Survival. "You're broke anyway, Mark." Victoria suddenly screamed, tears of panic streaming down her face. She backed away toward her leased car. "You're a boring, cheap loser. I only wanted the house." She didn't even wait for a response. She scrambled into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and threw the Porsche into reverse. She sped away so fast the tires smoked, leaving Mark and Agatha standing entirely alone on the pavement. Silence descended on the gate. Mark stood there, holding the fake heiress's eviction notice, his brain completely short-circuiting. He looked at me. For the first time in 5 years, he didn't look at me with contempt. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated terror. Clara, Mark whispered, his voice trembling. I don't understand. How do you have all this? The cars, the suits, the guards. You always said I did nothing all day, Mark. I smiled, a chilling, hollow expression. You said I just sat on my laptop. You were half right. I did sit on my laptop for 3 years. Building Aegis Cybersecurity, the company that was just acquired by Silicon Valley Bank yesterday for $500 million. Mark stumbled backward as if I had physically punched him in the chest. Agatha let out a strange, choking gasp, clutching her chest. 500 million? Agatha wheezed, her knees visibly shaking. That's right, Agatha, I said, turning my cold eyes to her. That $20 million estate at the summit, the one you were coming to tour today, it's mine. I bought it in cash. It was supposed to be a surprise gift for Mark's birthday. I was going to give you the keys today. Mark let out a guttural sound, a mix of a sob and a gasp for air. He dropped to his knees right there on the concrete. The realization of what he had thrown away, the sheer magnitude of his catastrophic mistake, was physically crushing him. Clara, oh my God, please, Mark wept, reaching a hand out toward my stilettos. I'm so sorry, I was blind. She tricked me. Victoria manipulated me. You know I love you, you are my wife. Don't touch me, I snapped, the venom finally bleeding into my voice. I stepped back, looking down at him with absolute disgust. I am not your wife. I signed the divorce papers you threw at my face. But we're not quite finished yet. I nodded to Mr. Sterling. The lawyer stepped forward, pulling a crisp legal document from his briefcase. Mr. Mark. Sterling began, his voice devoid of emotion. 2 months ago, you invested your entire life savings, along with a massive bank loan, into a tech startup called Nova Solutions. Mark looked up, his eyes bloodshot and terrified. Yes, it's going to be huge. I'm going to be a millionaire from that. You are going to be nothing, I interrupted softly. Because Nova Solutions is a shell company. It is a subsidiary owned entirely by my corporation Aegis. I created it. And if you recall the terms of your partnership agreement, Clause 4B specifically states that any investor who engages in gross moral misconduct, public scandal, or breaches of marital fidelity, which triggers a divorce, immediately forfeits their equity without compensation. Mark stopped breathing. His eyes glazed over. No, you couldn't, I whispered. I fired you this morning. Your shares are void. Your investment is gone. You are completely legally bankrupt. Agatha suddenly shrieked, a sound like a dying animal. She ran forward, grabbing my arm. Clara, my house. Mark used the deed to my house as collateral for that bank loan. If he loses the investment, the bank takes my home. I looked down at Agatha's hand on my expensive suit. I slowly, deliberately peeled her fingers off my arm, looking into her panicked, tear-streaked face. Oh, Agatha, I smiled, my eyes completely dead. You don't need to worry about the bank. I bought the bank's debt portfolio this morning. I hold your mortgage now. Agatha froze. You do? Yes, I leaned in, my voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. And since you are currently in default, I ordered the foreclosure at 9 a.m. The sheriffs have already changed the locks on your house. Your belongings are currently sitting in trash bags on the front lawn. I stood up straight, looking at the two of them. A mother and son, broken, bankrupt, and utterly destroyed in less than 24 hours. You told me last night that a useless woman like me would end up living under a bridge, I said, my voice echoing off the stone walls of the gate. Well, Agatha, Mark, I highly suggest you start looking for a sturdy bridge. It's supposed to rain again tonight. I turned my back on them. I walked to my Rolls-Royce. I didn't look back as Mark began to scream my name, a horrific, tearing sound of absolute despair. I didn't look back as Agatha collapsed onto the pavement, wailing into the dirt. The heavy doors closed. The engine purred, and the queen drove up to her castle, leaving the peasants to rot in the mud. They say the universe has a sense of irony. I never believed it until the sky broke open again that evening. The storm returned to Los Angeles just as the sun dipped below the horizon. But this time, it couldn't touch me. I was sitting in the grand library of my $20 million estate at the Pinnacle. The fire crackled warmly in the floor-to-ceiling marble fireplace. I was wearing a silk robe, sipping a glass of Macallan 1926, the golden liquid warming my throat. Outside, the wind howled, thrashing the ancient oak trees against the fortified glass. It sounded exactly like the storm from the night before. The night I was thrown away like garbage. A soft knock echoed through the heavy oak door of the library. Elias stepped in, his posture rigid, a tablet in his hand. Ma'am, he said, his voice a low rumble. I apologize, a situation at the perimeter. I didn't turn around, I just stared into the flames. Let me guess, the rats are back. Yes, ma'am. Elias nodded. The primary security checkpoint at the base of the hill just radioed in. Mark and Agatha have bypassed the outer pedestrian gate. They walked the entire 2 miles up the private road in the storm. They are currently clinging to your main driveway gates, demanding to be let in. The local authorities have been dispatched for trespassing, but they will take at least 15 minutes to navigate the mudslides on the lower canyon road. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my whiskey. A lesser woman would have told security to drag them away. A lesser woman would have stayed in the warmth of the fire, ignoring the ghosts of her past. But I didn't spend 3 years building an empire in the dark just to hide in a castle. I wanted to look into their eyes one last time. I wanted to see the exact moment their souls broke. Bring me an umbrella, Elias, I said, setting the crystal glass down. The black one. The walk down the sweeping, manicured driveway felt like a victory lap. The rain hammered against the massive black umbrella held over my head by my lead bodyguard. The massive iron gates of my estate loomed ahead, illuminated by the harsh, blinding white security floodlights. And there they were. If I hadn't known them, I wouldn't have recognized the 2 figures clinging to the wrought iron bars. Mark and Agatha looked like corpses dragged from a river. Their designer clothes, the suits and silk dresses they had worn so proudly this morning to mock me, were plastered to their bodies, stained black with canyon mud. Agatha's perfect hair was a tangled, ratty mess across her face. Mark was shivering so violently his teeth were audibly chattering over the sound of the rain. When Mark saw me approach, his bloodshot eyes widened, a sickening, manic smile stretched across his freezing face. "Clara," he screamed, his voice hoarse and desperate, fighting the howling wind. "Clara, thank God, I knew it! I knew you wouldn't just leave us out here. Tell them to open the gates, honey, it's freezing." I stopped 10 feet away from the gate. I didn't speak. I just looked at him. The sheer, unfathomable audacity of this man. Agatha shoved her way to the front, pressing her muddy face against the iron bars. "Clara, my sweet girl, please, my house is gone. The sheriffs literally threw me out onto the lawn. We have nowhere to go. You have to let us in. Family takes care of family. Family takes care of family." The words hung in the icy air, so utterly hypocritical they almost made me laugh. "Family?" I asked, my voice slicing through the storm, amplified by the cold, hard stone of the walls. "Is that what we are, Agatha? Because last night, when you ripped the coat off my back and shoved me into the freezing rain, you told me I was a parasite. You told me I belonged under a bridge." Agatha waved her hands frantically, her eyes darting around like a trapped rat. No, you misunderstood, Clara. I was testing you, yes. I always knew you were a genius. I knew you had this incredible potential inside you, but you were hiding it. I had to push you. I had to be the villain so you could become this glorious, successful woman. The shamelessness was breathtaking. It was a masterclass in delusion. "She's right, Clara," Mark yelled, gripping the bars so hard his knuckles bled. "We were victims too. It was Victoria, that blonde psycho. She brainwashed me. She drugged my drinks, I swear to God. She used her fake money to manipulate my mind. I never wanted to sign those divorce papers. She forced me. You know I love you. I have always loved you." "You kissed her," I stated, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "In my living room. You laughed while she mocked me. You threw an envelope of divorce papers at my chest and told me I was a homeless loser." Mark shook his head wildly, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the rain and mud. "I was a fool. I was a stupid blind fool. But I am your husband. We took vows, Clara, for better or for worse. You have $500 million. You have a $20 million mansion. You can't just leave your husband out here to die in the mud. You owe me." The sudden flash of entitlement in his eyes, the arrogant, demanding tone breaking through his pathetic begging, was the spark that ignited the final explosion of my rage. I stepped out from under the umbrella. Elias reached out to stop me, but I raised a hand. The freezing rain hit my silk robe, instantly soaking me, but I didn't care. I walked right up to the iron gate until my face was inches from Mark's. "I owe you?" I hissed. The words came out like venom, low and lethal. The storm seemed to quiet down just to let him hear my wrath. "I gave you 5 years of my life. I ironed your shirts. I cooked your meals. I swallowed your mother's poison every single day so you could have a peaceful home. I built a $500 million empire in the dead of night, exhausting myself to the bone. And I still woke up at 4:30 a.m. to make sure your coffee was hot. I did all of that because I loved you." Mark stared at me, trembling, shrinking under the sheer force of my voice. "And how did you repay me, Mark?" I continued, my voice rising, vibrating with absolute fury. "You paraded a cheap, rented con artist in front of me. You humiliated me. You looked at me like I was a piece of trash stuck to your shoe. You didn't just break my heart, you tried to destroy my humanity." "Clara, please," Mark whimpered, dropping to his muddy knees, pressing his forehead against the cold iron bars. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'll do anything. I'll be your servant. I'll scrub the floors. Just don't leave me out here, I have nothing." Agatha sank down next to him, sobbing hysterically, clawing at the mud. Have mercy on an old woman. I'll never say a bad word to you again. You are the queen of the house, Clara. Just open the gate." I looked down at them, a mother and son kneeling in the mud, stripped of their arrogance, their money, and their pride. They looked exactly as they were, pathetic hollow shells of human beings. The anger inside me evaporated. The fire burned out. All that was left was a vast, frozen wasteland of absolute indifference. I reached into the pocket of my soaked silk robe. I pulled out a single silver quarter. I flicked it through the iron bars. It landed in the mud with a soft, pathetic plop, right next to Mark's trembling hand. Mark looked at the coin, then looked up at me, his eyes wide with confusion and terror. What is this?" "It's for the payphone at the gas station down the hill," I said, my voice completely flat. "Call someone who cares." I turned my back on them. "Clara, no, no!" Mark's scream tore through the night. A feral, agonizing shriek of a man watching his only lifeline disappear forever. "Clara, come back, you bitch! You can't do this to Yus!" Agatha began to wail, slamming her fists against the unyielding iron gates. "We'll die out here! You're a monster! A monster!" I didn't stop walking. I stepped back under Elias's umbrella. The warm glow of my mansion waited for me at the top of the hill. Behind me, the wailing and screaming were suddenly drowned out by a new sound. The sharp, piercing wail of police sirens. Red and blue lights cut through the darkness, reflecting violently off the wet asphalt, as 3 police cruisers swerved up the private road, boxing Mark and Agatha against my gates. "Put your hands where we can see them. Step away from the gate," a police officer over a megaphone boomed. I didn't turn around to watch them get handcuffed. I didn't need to see them get shoved into the back of a squad car, covered in mud and shivering. Their story was over. They were no longer characters in my life. They were just dirt I had finally washed off my shoes. I walked through the massive oak doors of my estate. The warmth of the fire embraced me immediately. "Shall I have the staff draw you a hot bath, ma'am?" Elias asked quietly, taking my wet robe. "Yes, Elias?" "Thank you." I smiled, a real genuine smile. I looked out the window one last time. The police cars were driving away, taking the trash down the hill, out of my sight, out of my world forever. The storm outside was still raging, but inside my castle, the air was still, warm, and perfectly peaceful. They thought they had buried me in the mud. They didn't realize I was a seed. And now, the queen was finally in full bloom.